Hello everyone, welcome to this new lesson. Today we're going to learn about pronouns in Turkish language and their correct use within a sentence. So in this lesson, we'll look at what a pronoun is, and then the specific type of pronoun that I'll talk about in this lesson is the subject pronoun. We're also going to learn the negative sentences for these pronouns, and in the end, there'll be a short summary of the whole lesson, which will also help you take a screenshot so you can memorize or revise later on. So first, let's see what basically is a pronoun. And it is a word that you use in place of a noun or a noun phrase that has already been mentioned in a sentence. So for example, when talking about someone, let's say Tom Cruise, I would say, Tom Cruise is an American actor. He is very famous. He has won many awards. The word he is a subject pronoun that I'm using instead of his name in the sentences to avoid the repetition. Here are some other subject pronouns. Now in English language, there are many different kinds of pronouns. I'll be covering all of them in the upcoming lessons, but for this one, the only kind that I'm going to focus on is the subject pronoun. Now, as you can see in this table, in English, all the pronouns are written in the form of separate words like I, me, her, they, us. They're all separate words. But in Turkish, things are a little different. In Turkish, the pronouns are mentioned two ways within a sentence. So first, there are standalone pronouns, for example, ben, which means I in Turkish language. And then for every standalone pronoun, there is a personal suffix, which is also sometimes referred to as the possessive suffix. For example, this code here represents one of the personal suffixes that is used in Turkish language. Now I know that from the look of it, it does look all mathematical and kind of a complex code, but once you understand the logic behind these suffixes, they make so much sense, and with time it becomes kind of automatic. I mean, with time you would no longer need to think very consciously about which suffix to add in terms of these pronouns. I'll show you a little example of how these pronouns and these suffixes are used in a sentence in Turkish. So for example, ben bir öğrenciyim, meaning I am a student in English. Now in this sentence, the word ben means I, bir means the number one, and also a or an, like an apple, a book, when you're talking about one singular object. And the word öğrenci here, this part, it means a student. Now in Turkish, you add these personal suffixes in the sentence as well. So when you want to say I'm a student, you say ben bir öğrenciyim. We're going to look at these standalone pronouns and these personal suffixes in more detail later in this lesson. But first, let's see what exactly is a subject pronoun, or Özne Zamiri in Turkish language. And it is the pronoun that is doing the action. For example, I love going to school. You are going to school. And here are some other examples. Now let's see the Turkish words for these subject pronouns. And for a better understanding, I've separated the sections for singular and plural pronouns. So the Turkish word for the English subject pronoun I is ben. For you, it is sen. For he, she, and it, thankfully there are no separate words. The only word that's used for all three of them is o. For we, it is biz. In Turkish, the word you as a plural subject pronoun is not only used to refer to a group of people, it is also used for someone who is elder than you or who is higher in rank than you. For example, your teachers, your professors, or anybody, like when you go to a company and you meet a manager, you refer to them as siz. You do not say sen to them. It is kind of disrespectful. So the Turkish word for you in the plural form is siz. And for they, it is onlar. So when writing a sentence, we'll use these words in place of English pronouns. And that's actually the simple part. Now let's move on to the possessive or the personal suffixes. For ben or I in English, the suffix pronoun takes the form of this kind of code here. And I'm going to break it down for you. So you notice that this y is in brackets here. You use this Y if the last alphabet of the word to which you're going to attach the suffix to is a vowel. I'll explain this later with an example. But for now, you also notice that this I is capital here. And like I've explained earlier in the lesson about vowel harmony in Turkish language, it shows that this suffix can take 4 different forms. And they include im, yum. Okay, so moving on. For sen, which means you in Turkish, there are 4 different forms again. And this is represented by this capital I again. So the suffix can be either sun, sin, sun, sun. For o or he, she, it in English, there is actually no personal suffix. And for biz or v in Turkish, the personal suffix looks like this. And there is y in brackets here again, which shows that you use this y if the last alphabet of the main word root is a vowel. The capital I again shows that there are going to be 4 forms. So the suffix can be either us, is, üz, üz. So moving on, for the plural you or siz in Turkish, the personal suffix looks like this. So there are 4 forms again. Sınız, siniz, sunuz, sunuz. And lastly, for onlar or they, the personal suffix looks like this. Now there are 2 options in this case. The personal suffix is lar, and sometimes you just do not add a suffix, like in the case of o. Now you notice that in this case, the alphabet A is capital here. This represents that this personal suffix can take 2 forms, the A form or the E form. So it can be either lar or ler, or you're not going to use any suffix at all, like in the case of o. So next in this lesson, I'm going to explain how you attach these suffixes to a word. And the word that I'll consider first is öğrenci, which means a student. So let's see how to do that first for the subject pronoun ben or I in English. The personal suffix takes the form of this code, and it can take 4 forms: im, And so here's our word öğrenci, and here are the 4 options of personal suffix for the pronoun ben. And on the basis of the rules of 4-way vowel harmony, the kind of suffix that we're going to use here is the I form. The reason being, the last vowel of this word is I. And since the last alphabet is a vowel, we're also going to need to use the connecting Y here to maintain the harmony in the pronunciation. In Turkish, the sequence of alphabets is usually 1 vowel and then a consonant and then a vowel again. This makes the language sound very harmonious, melodious, and very smooth and kind of easy to pronounce as well. So after attaching this personal suffix, the word becomes öğrenciyim. And this im suffix in itself shows that I'm talking about myself, like I am a student. Now to help you better understand the concept of this connecting Y, I'm going to add another example here of a word that ends with a consonant. So for example, doktor. The spellings here are almost same like the English word doctor, but in Turkish it's doktor and not doctor. And here are our suffix options. And since the last vowel here is O, depending on the rules of 4-way vowel harmony again, we're going to use the form of the suffix, the U form. And we're not going to use the connecting Y here because the last alphabet here is a consonant. So you do not need to attach the connecting Y here. So the word becomes doktorum. Doktorum. The part again, the personal suffix again represents that I'm talking about myself, meaning I am a doctor. And now let's use these example words for the Turkish pronoun sen or you in English. And the suffix here is this, meaning there are 4 options: sun, sin, sun, sun. And our example word öğrenci, the 4 options that we have. So since the last vowel here is I, we're going to use the I form. So the word becomes öğrencisin. The sin personal suffix in itself shows that I'm talking about you. You are a student. Now looking at the other example, doctor. We have these 4 options. So since the last vowel here is O, we're going to use the U form and the word becomes doktorsun. You are a doctor. And for the Turkish pronoun o, which is used for he, she, and it, there is actually no personal suffix. So if I have to say he is a student, then I'm just going to say o, öğrenci. Or for doctor, I'm going to say doktor. There is no personal suffix for he, she, or it. But for biz or we, there is a suffix which is is with the connecting y, and there are 4 options. So for the word öğrenci, the 4 options again. So since the last vowel here is I, we're going to use the I form depending on the rules of 4-way vowel harmony. So the word becomes öğrenciyiz. We're also using the connecting Y because the last alphabet here is a vowel. So we need to connect this consonant here to get the harmony in the word. And for the word doctor, which ends with a consonant, here are the 4 options again. Since the last vowel here is O, we're going to use the U form depending on those rules. So the word becomes doktoruz. We are doctors. For siz, which is the plural form of you in Turkish, the suffix looks like this. There are 4 options. And for the word öğrenci, 4 options again. Since the last vowel here is I, we're going to use the siniz form and the word becomes öğrencisiniz, meaning you are students. And for doktor, the 4 options, the last vowel is O, so we're using the sunuz form. The word becomes doktorsunuz. Now this you could be somebody who's elder than you or somebody who's in a higher rank than you, somebody who you want to refer to or talk to with a lot of respect. So you are students, could be 2 people or could be somebody who's higher in rank than you. And lastly, for the personal suffix onlar or they in English, we have 2 options. So we could use a personal suffix or we could use no suffix at all. And the suffix here is a little different. We have a capital A, meaning it's either lar or lar. And we're going to use the rules of 2-way vowel harmony here. So for the word öğrenci, these are our options. So if we're using the lar or lar form, then since the last vowel here is I, we're going to need to use the E form. So the word becomes öğrenciler. And let's say if we're using this option of not attaching any suffix at all, then it becomes öğrenci. Onlar öğrenci. For the word doktor, our options. So since the last vowel here is O, we're going to need to use the A form. The word becoming doktorlar. And if we use this option, then it's doktor. Now, since there's more than one option in this case, you might ask which one do we prefer more? And that usually depends on the context of your sentence, but I've noticed that people generally prefer the no suffix form for the pronoun onlar. So they would prefer to say onlar öğrenci. Okay, for now, we're going to quickly go over what we've learned in this lesson so far. And we have seen that the Turkish standalone subject pronouns are ben, sen, o, biz, siz, and onlar. And the suffix personal pronouns are for ben, which means that it can take 4 forms, im, with the connecting y if the last alphabet of the word is a vowel. And for sen, it is sin, sin, sun, sun. For o, there is no suffix. For biz, it is is, uz, uz. For siz, it is sınız, siniz, sunuz, sunuz. For onlar, there are two options. You could use the lar suffix, lar or lar, or you could choose to use no suffix at all. And now we're going to see an example sentence formed using these pronouns and the possessive or personal suffixes within the same sentence. So for example, for ben bir öğrenciyim. The subject pronoun and the suffix here. Ben bir öğrenciyim. Sen bir öğrencisin. O bir öğrenci. Biz öğrenciyiz. Siz öğrencisiniz. Onlar öğrenciler or onlar öğrenci. Now, one thing that I'd like to mention here is that in Turkish, while the use of this bir is grammatically correct, in everyday conversations it is not used. So people generally say ben öğrenciyim, which automatically means that I am a student. Actually, the word öğrenciyim in itself means that I am a student, because this part here shows I am. Or in this case, this itself is a sentence. Öğrencisin. You are a student. I mean, it's not, even if you're not using the word sen or bir, this word in itself means that you are a student. And this is because Turkish is a language like that. So instead of adding separate words, you could just add a suffix in here, and it makes a whole sentence. So this means that it is very important for you to learn the correct use of these personal suffixes, which are also sometimes referred to as the possessive suffixes. So this table covers the information that we have learned in this video so far for the positive use of subject pronouns. For the negative cases, let's assume that I'm not a student, you're not a student, we're not students, and actually no one here is a student. So how do we say that in Turkish? And for this case, the important word for us is değil. Değil, meaning not in English language. So for example, when you're saying that I am a student, you say ben bir öğrenciyim. But when you're saying that you're not a student, you're going to say ben bir öğrenci değilim. Now you notice how the personal suffix or the possessive suffix is attached to the word öğrenci here in this case, but for the negative sentence, it is attached to the word değil. So ben bir öğrenci değilim. And it kind of specifies that it is me who's not a student. So like me, not a student. Now moving on, I'm going to show you how you're going to use the word değil as well as the possessive or the personal suffixes for every pronoun individually. So for ben, these are the options. And for the word öğrenci, I want to say that I'm not a student. So öğrenci değilim. Now considering that for the negative context, we're only adding the suffix to the word değil, we're only focusing on the last vowel here, which is I. So showing that we need to use the I form of the suffix. And this is how it is going to be done for all of these subject pronouns, because the word değil is going to remain constant. However, I'm still going to quickly go over all the personal pronouns, and I'm going to consider the examples of öğrenci and doktor both. So if you want, you could just skip a few minutes or continue listening to these examples. I just still want to go through them so you don't have any confusion later on. So for the word doktor, the options, and then doktor değilim. Again, because I, so we're going to use the I form. For sen, the options, öğrenci değilsin. I, so the I form. Öğrenci değilsin. Doktor değilsin. You're not a doctor. O, there's no suffix. So, öğrenci değil. O, öğrenci değil. For doctor, doktor değil. For biz, öğrenci değiliz. Öğrenci değiliz. Doktor değiliz. We are not doctors. For siz, which is the plural form, the options, öğrenci değilsiniz. You are not students. Doktor değilsiniz. You are not doctors. And for onlar, the options, öğrenci değiller or öğrenci değil. Doktor değiller. Doktor değil. And again, like I said earlier, you're going to prefer the no suffix form instead of the lar form, which is grammatically correct, but still it's not preferred. So now we've reached the end of our lesson and it's time for a short summary and a revision chart as well, so you can take your screenshot then. So in this lesson, on the whole, we've learned that these are the English subject pronouns, and then we have the Turkish standalone pronouns ben, sen, o, biz, siz, onlar. And then we learned about the Turkish personal or possessive suffixes for each of these subject pronouns. However, there is no specific personal or possessive pronoun for o. And for the case of onlar, we have two options. We could either use the suffix lar or ler, or there is no option. I mean, you don't use any other suffix. And then we learned the positive sentences. An example is ben bir öğrenciyim, sen bir öğrencisin, o bir öğrenci, biz öğrenciyiz, siz öğrencisiniz, onlar öğrenciler, or onlar öğrenci. However, you're going to prefer the öğrenci form with no suffix. And we also learned the negative form. So ben bir öğrenci değilim, sen bir öğrenci değilsin, o bir öğrenci değil, biz öğrenci değiliz, siz öğrenci değilsiniz, onlar öğrenci değiller, or onlar öğrenci değil. So that is all that we covered in this lesson. You can take a screenshot now so you can revise it later on as well. I really hope that this video lesson helped you learn about subject pronouns and how to use them in a sentence. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to get more updates about new video lessons. Till then, take care and I'll see you all in the next lesson. Bye bye.